Purposely, I've chosen a quiet place so we can actually get down into some depth here, Martin. Martin Macmillan here, who is, I think, part of Pocket Gamer, because Pocket Gamer Connect, you've been speaking here so often. Different approaches, different companies, now the Mobile Finance Collective. What is that? Tell us about that.
So Mobile Finance Collective, or MFC as we call it, is something I've been wanting to do for a number of years. So I spent 10 years as a lender into the gaming and app space in a company called Pollen VC. And over those years, I saw the same thing repeatedly happen, which was that the founders of the company would run the finances until it reached a moment which was generally around $10 million in revenue. And then what they would do is they would go out and they would hire a CFO. One day they would wake up and we need to have a proper CFO, because as a founder, you're doing all the different things. But actually, so there was this moment that they realized they needed a proper CFO, and they would generally hire people from outside the industry, typically with an accounting background. And this person would then be catapulted into the role. And of course, they're all generally extremely competent CFOs, but there was so much technical knowledge to learn, right? So if you're a CFO who's been classically trained, excuse me, and then you get transplanted into this world of cohort analysis and predictive LTV modeling, there's a lot to learn. Now, what struck me, and again, this is from empirical experience of working with hundreds of CFOs over 10 years, is that if you work in a gaming studio, if you work in user acquisition, you work in ad monetization, there's lots of community, right? There are conferences. You can come to Pocket Gamer, you can go to Las Vegas, you can do all these things, and that's where you can kind of learn your trade, meet industry connections and peers, etc. And knowledge share. But in finance, absolutely nothing. There was no community whatsoever. And very often these CFOs it's a very lonely role. So if you talk to some of our mentors, I'll explain a little bit about that. But everyone has found it to be a lonely role. And the CFOs find that everyone's looking to them for the answers. They don't necessarily have the answers. And yet there's no community. So they're sitting there behind their big Excel sheets trying to figure stuff out on their own. And so what I wanted to do in terms of launching and building MFC was to create a community for anyone doing that role. So whether it's a CFO or VP of finance, or often it's a COO, sometimes it's even the founders, anyone who's holding the purse strings, who's responsible for financial planning and for financial, for analysis and so on, that's who really we're targeting. We create a community for them where they can learn from each other, interact with each other. And then also the other thing in terms of setting it up was really obvious to me is I've never been the CFO of a gaming company, so what do I know? But over the years, I've got to know lots and lots of CFOs. So we're lucky enough to have a really great rock star lineup of mentors who have been there and done that. And then they're happy to give back to some of those, maybe at an earlier stage in their career, and mentor them, whether it's direct mentoring, it's just office hours, or it's even chiming in. We run lots of different town halls and content, etc. So
I have to say what's also really interesting is that you've brought them in from the industry, because you said sometimes you'd get a CFO from somewhere, transplant them into a gaming company. I was at your dinner. You have Erla from I think it was Supercell. Yep. Yes, exactly. Thank you. And a number of others I met who really know their stuff from in the games industry. I think that's really important here.
Yeah, that's the thing. So because the community is really it's an inch wide and a mile deep. So this isn't a community for everyone in gaming or anything at all. But if you are in that CFO, that finance role, this is super, super good fit for you. And the idea of being able to learn from people who have really been there and done that. So there were two really strong reactions from all of the mentors that we invited in. One is the acceptance is it's a very lonely role. The lonely was an adjective for every single one. And yeah, but the other thing is they were like, oh, I wish this had been around in my day, because I had to figure out all of these things on my own. Right. So the other thing that's become really obvious is that the problems that CFOs or finance leads are grappling with on a daily basis, 99% chance the exact same problem has been solved by someone else in the community. So rather than suffer in silence, or even worse, go back and pay your accountants to figure out problems, you're way better to ask a community of people who've already solved the problem you're having. So I'm not saying absolutely everything, but very often it's exactly the same issues that keep coming up.
So what kinds of issues are they? I mean, the CFOs in your community will know that, but when I'm thinking about the pocket gamer audience, we're also talking to C-level, saying, a little bit more of, understand what your CFO is grappling with, because then you can also be supportive at some level. So what is it they struggle with? So
here's a great example. It's actually the panel we're doing later this afternoon. So one of the CFOs in the community just posted a question out on a town hall meeting, which was, who can I trust as a source of truth? So I'm getting conflicting data from my MMP, from my own user acquisition team and BI, and then all of the ad networks, and they're all telling me different things. So who can I trust? And it was like a really open question. Yeah. So the answer to that is multifaceted. So first of all, there's the external answer. So when, for example, and this is through one of our mentors, been through, I think, 18 different acquisitions in a previous life. Standard set of definitions. What is an install? What is a 7-day attribution window? All of these things, there was huge scope for interpretation between. So potential acquirers had to really get their heads around this. But it also turns out that even internally, and this is one of the things we're going to discuss in the panel, there is a huge amount of conflicting data, even between departments. So user acquisition may think of an install as this, but the finance people may be looking at a different, maybe a calendar window instead of a UTC 24-hour look back or something like that. So lots of different things can slip through the cracks. So it's really important. The thing that we teased out from that is it's really important to have a standard set of definitions. So everyone is on the same page, whether that's for an internal audience or an external. And this was the sort of thing that we sort of teased out of everyone, and we came up with a solution and a program of how to sort of fix it.
That's fascinating, because you think about it, you're coming up with standards. It would be great if you had in your community, or maybe this is part of what you're thinking, is you can strongly suggest it. You can never enforce anything, but you can strongly suggest that when we're discussing these matters, these are the definitions we want. So, network partners, MMPs, let's try to be on the same page. I mean, is there hope for that?
100%. It's absolutely in the works right now, and not just on terms of definitions, but on multiple levels. Mm-hmm. And because we're a community of people, we're not a vendor. We don't have an axe to grind one way or another. So the whole idea of community sourcing, whether it's definitions or it's best practice or models or whatever it may be, is super important. So there's lots planned on there. The other thing is we're working on a training course as well. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to create, you don't have to be a member of the community to participate in this, but for anyone who's doing a finance role in a gaming studio or an app company, we're creating a whole suite of learning materials called Finance Fundamentals, just to help you get up to speed with this, and then hopefully show you the power of community. Part of it is to help you get your knowledge up, and then the other part of it is to show you what you don't know, and then how being part of a wider community can really help you in that.
Absolutely. I was going to say, you have the community there. So these educational modules will be, on the mark. They'll be on point. And then if you need more, you can join the community. You can talk about this with them. How does one join the community, by the way, Martin? So
we have, you can join through the website, which is mobfin.co. There's an application to apply, but it's not something you just apply for and then sign up to immediately. We have to vet. But the vetting is to ensure we keep the quality really high. So we don't want to have, a bunch of vendors and ad networks and aspiring founders and so on in there. So we keep the quality of the conversation really high by making sure everyone is in a finance role, whether that's an explicit or an implicit, right? Yeah. Very often it's like,
fractional goes too.
Yeah, whoever's holding the purse strings, that's really the qualifying factor. And in terms of the community, we want to make sure people will be active members. We don't want passive members. Even if they sit there and they pay their fees, they just sit there with video off and don't participate. That's not really what we're looking for. So active participatory members is really what it's all about.
And when did you launch it exactly? Because I know it's been your dream for a while, because you have that background, so you know these problems, and now you can kick back a little with all of your experience and start to solve them.
Well, it's been something I wanted to do for probably the last 6 years.
Oh.
And only last year, did the bandwidth become available to do it. So I very quickly realized that it wasn't something I could kind of do myself as a sort of side project. So if we were going to do it, we were going to do it properly. So Anna Nicolina joined us to run the community on a full-time basis. Mm-hmm. And we have a team of kind of freelancers and so on that we've, people I've got to know over the years to help with, design and socials and lots of other aspects.
Mm-hmm. So the town halls, all of that, a lot of it's going to be remote as well, obviously. But what is it like in the networking there? What do you have planned in the way of just making certain that everyone is working in the right direction and that there's knowledge sharing? Knowledge sharing is so important, and you're going to have to tackle that remotely. But you probably have some meetups, some ideas. I went to your dinner, so you obviously have some. What's on the books?
So a key thing that we're doing is we do monthly themes.
Okay.
So, excuse me, and doing a monthly theme, it makes it easier for us to curate content and have a series of things. So the community tells us what they want to know about, and we'll go and curate interesting speakers, panels, town halls, firesides. So for example, towards the end of last year, we did AI in finance. And we had a bunch of we had a showcase event, we had some practical sessions. We also did forecasting analysis. So we had some super technical sessions on, various different forecasting techniques and different software to do that. Excuse me. Then we did, user acquisition month. User acquisition, lots of things gravitate back to UA, but we're not trying to be solely focused on user acquisition. And then, the other topics that we've got coming up this year are M&A, but with a focus on integrating companies post-transaction. It's like a really, really, really big topic, and there's lots of people we can pull in to learn from that. And then also, some of the grittier aspects of it, like HR. So if you're a CFO, you've got these days people working in 15 different countries on a remote basis. How do you make sure that you're up to date with all the regulatory environment and compliance and so on as well? So it's not always the sexy user acquisition stuff. There's a lot of the kind of the gritty, the more mundane accounting system migrations and these things as well. But anything that's on the CFO's plate, we're trying to, and they need help with, that the community can help with. Those are the topics we're looking to address through that sort of monthly theme basis.
Because also the role of the CFO has evolved very differently. It used to be really just get stuck into the Excel sheets, but now it's strategy, it's forecasting. I mean, these are data-driven companies. Game studios are data-driven. Everything is data-driven. And therefore the CFO, it's like, understand the tools, understand things that they were never trained for.
So one of the key observations in the first, 6-7 months of running the community is, one of the key things to get right is having an understanding of the other areas of the business. So finance function is generally isolated out, completely separate from most of the other areas. Where we've seen it work really well is where finance take the time to understand other areas, particularly on the user acquisition side, but also products and live ops and so on as well, and also vice versa. So taking the time to understand each other's business will always engineer better results. So that's something we, from an organizational design point of view, we advocate for really strongly. And we've seen great results when, again, particularly with finance and user acquisition, there is a better understanding of each other's business, which is very much a two-way street.
Mm-hmm. So what are they doing? We talked about it being a lonely existence, but it's changing. You're going to bring some richness to that conversation, some knowledge there. What are studios doing now currently that maybe they're not aware of, but they should be avoiding or changing and doing that this year? In other words, it should be top of the business agenda, top of the finance agenda. What would that be?
So I think particularly in slightly leaner times in the gaming industry, making sure you're engaging in best practice and everything. So just because you've done it a certain way for the last N years, that doesn't mean it's the best way to do it. So one of the key things, again, we advocate for is talking to others about how they're doing things. So again, one of the key themes of the community is like, I'm on it. I think I'm doing a pretty good job, but I'm very interested to know how other people are doing it. I don't want to know their numbers. I don't want to know anything confidential. I just want to know the methodologies to make sure I'm sort of constantly evolving. And I'm very interested to know what others are doing, because I can always glean something from that insight. So whether it's a town hall call on a particular topic, or it's a mentor call within the office hours framework, everyone's always very, very keen to learn. No one comes to the community with all the answers. No one has a monopoly on the right answer. So you may think you're doing a pretty good job, but you're always keen, and these are the sort of members we're looking for, always keen to kind of push the needle, figure out if there's a better way to do something.
Because there are so many models. I remember when we met, which is over a decade now, 11 years, and you were always watching this because you had the financial background in an industry that wasn't anywhere near that. And just the discussions with you of what is LTV, which model, we have a long way to go. And now when I'm hearing about the single source of truth, I mean, there's going to be a lot that you're going to have in these fundamental courses, everything else. I mean, it's never dull with you, Martin. What do you want to be telling me in about a year when we meet up again and you'll be telling me about your finance collective? What do you want to be saying was a huge contribution?
I mean, look, we've got pretty big plans. What started off as a sort of passion project, if you like, is it's getting a lot of different legs. So, for example, we have I must have pitched like 15 calls in the last few months from different headhunters. So saying, hey, we're looking for a CFO for X company. Is there anyone in your network we should be talking to? So this kept coming up, and we're thinking, well, actually, if we've got the best curated community of CFOs and finance professionals, particularly as we start to expand out into associate members and so on as well, we have a pretty interesting kind of ponds to fish in. So we're going to launch our own jobs boards and some of these things as well. And then obviously in terms of sponsors, there's lots of people that find a curated CFO audience really. So we're looking at a few different sponsorship options where, again, if we can subsidize content by having a sponsor come in, we can just make it available for more people. Yeah. The more people that have access to it, then the greater the strength of the community.
Absolutely. And we don't want them lonely anymore. And we do want them smart. And I mean, I can imagine, something like your, and they ask for it, AI in finance. And then that lends itself to, some fantastic AI companies who can come in and not do a marketing thing, but actually like, how do I use the tool, right? How do I use it to its best? Yeah,
we did a showcase event in, I think, October, where we had a number of different AI companies. And the focus was then each of them had like 10 minutes to, and it was a pitch. It was a curated pitch. It was like, here are different ways that AI is changing the gaming business from the point of view of a CFO. So here are potential cost or time savings or both. And then the way the CFOs are thinking is like, it's not just all about cost. Is if I can get this product to market quicker, if I can, improve these metrics, whatever that I'm incentivized. So there are lots of different ways AI can help, obviously from a kind of gritty finance point of view, in terms of like, using, some of the LLMs or ChatGPT, whatever, to analyze financial statements or look for mistakes or reconcile tasks. Particularly on reconciliation, there are huge opportunities for AI to just streamline all the kind of numpty processing stuff that people spend a lot of time doing, but also to have a good understanding of how AI can change, ad creatives or content creation, or even, we had a voice response company coming and showing how you can use voice response as a way of re-engaging, churned players. Lots of different ideas, all using AI.
Yeah. And they have to be up on this. They have to know, because they have the purse strings, but that also controls where we're going to experiment. If a studio says, hey, we really want to do this, they have to be on board. They have to know about it and make a decision. I can say, Martin, it's actually fantastic that you finally have the bandwidth to put this together, because it wasn't there. It didn't exist. There's nothing more exciting than a blue ocean.
Well, I managed to scratch the itch, and it had been a I think it was probably about 6 years before I first had the seed of the idea. So it's nice to be able to kind of bring it to market. And of course, you launch something, you don't really know how it's going to go, but it's really nice when you get, not only the validation of people wanting to join the community and so on, but lots of external parties now coming, whether it's asking questions or sponsorship opportunities, or it's really nice validation to see, and good for the community. I mean, the power is basically in the members. So the more members we have, the more participation, which is super important, right? We really do not want people who will just sit on the sidelines. So participating members, and then it's, when you bring interesting people together, then, interesting things happen on the side. So yeah, it's been really fun.
And for us, every time we get together, an interesting conversation. Martin, it is always a pleasure. Thank you so
very much. Thanks, Peggy.
This show is all about how to do your job better, how to make an amazing game, how to market it, and you have a say. So if you have a story or know someone we need to shine a light on, then we would love to hear from you.
We want to hear from you. We want to reflect the reality of the mobile games market in all its wonderful complexity and strangeness. So if you have any suggestions for us, if you have any feedback for us, you can always get in touch. You can email us at podcast@pocketgamer.biz. You can find us on Twitter @PGBiz, and you can reach out to us through the pocketgamer.biz website. If you're interested in listening to all of our podcasts, you can find them at pocketgamer.biz/podcast, and we would love to hear your thoughts on future shows.
And we've got you covered on all the major platforms, so subscribe to the audio podcast, as Brian said. Look for us on YouTube. If you want to read it, hey, you can do that too, because we have a companion post for you as well on the pocketgamer.biz website.
Tune in again for the next edition of the pocketgamer.biz podcast, and we look forward to speaking to you in the near future. Until then, I'm Brian Baglow.
I'm Peggy Anne Salz, and that's a wrap until next week.